Please subscribe. It helps a lot.
Michael leaned against the porch railing and watched the mad river ease past, the August sun pressing its weight into his skin. The water moved in no hurry, smooth along the surface, green in some places, brown in others. Cicadas filled the air with their steady drone, a sound that never quite stopped, even at night. From here the river looked harmless, but he knew it carried a slow, steady pull against the bank. The house stood on a narrow strip of land between River Road and the actual river in Waterbury, Connecticut. It was built in 1801, and like many historic homes in the area, it had seen better days. White clapboard, worn gray in spots where the paint peeled away. The floorboards beneath him dipped near the edge of the porch, and the railing leaned just enough for someone to notice if they looked too long. Michael never stared at the flaws. This place meant more to him than a checklist of repairs. It was his. At 22, most of his friends still lived with their parents or split cramped apartments, and here he was with an entire house to himself. He told people that when they asked how he was doing. Robert stepped into view, or whatever passed for stepping when someone wasn't alive. The light behind him bent faintly, the way heat shimmered on pavement. His outline always seemed sharper at the edges than the space within, yet his face came through with startling clarity. Loose white shirt, dark curls at his forehead, eyes the color of wet stone. His gaze met Michael's, and the air shifted. A coolness brushed his cheek, almost a caress, and then Robert smiled. "You've been out here for hours," Robert said. His voice carried no echo, no otherworldly distortion. It sank into the air like it belonged there, smooth and warm, the kind of tone that could turn a remark about the weather into a secret between them. Michael tilted his head toward the river. "It's a good day for watching the water." Robert moved closer, the floorboards under him making no sound. He stopped a foot away, as close as he ever came. That closeness did strange things to Michael's chest, like his ribs strained against something they couldn't contain. He wondered what Robert's hand might feel like if it reached for his. The thought was always followed by the knowledge it could never happen. They stood together for a while without speaking. The sun caught the river at an angle that made its surface scatter back points of light, as if coins had been tossed in and caught mid-sink. Michael liked to imagine they stayed there forever, suspended, unable to reach the bottom. A sound came from behind them, the porch screen door creaking open. Dylan stepped out, a bottle of water in his hand, hair flattened from the humidity. He scanned the yard, then the porch. His gaze skipped over Robert without recognition, like always. "This place needs work," Dylan said after a moment. His eyes fixed on a spot near the corner of the porch where the wood had darkened, warped by years of rain. "You see that? Probably water damage. And the windows? 2 are swollen shut. You won't get them open without replacing the frames." Michael glanced toward the spots Dylan pointed out, but said nothing. "You should think about the foundation, too," Dylan added. "The river's closer than when you moved in." Michael's brow tightened. "It's fine." The smell of the water reached them then, sweet in a way that reminded Michael of summer fruit left in the sun, but underneath it lingered something else. Faint. Sour. Like wood left to soak for too long. Robert's eyes flicked toward the river when the wind carried the scent stronger. "Leave it," Robert said softly. "Meant for Michael alone. The house has stood longer than either of you have been breathing." Dylan took a drink, still scanning the yard. "I'm telling you, the bank's eroding. You lose another couple feet, the city's going to start asking questions." Michael shrugged, looking past Dylan toward the stretch of water that caught the afternoon light. The current made no visible disturbance on the surface, but somewhere under that calm, it tugged and pulled at the soil. He had felt that same pull in Robert from the moment he first saw him in the upstairs hallway, nearly a year ago. The river never hurried, and neither did Robert. They both took their time, wearing away at whatever they wanted. When Dylan went back inside, the porch felt quieter. Robert stood with his hands loosely clasped, watching the water with an unreadable expression. "You're not thinking of leaving, are you?" Robert asked. Michael shook his head. Robert's smile returned, slow, deliberate. "Good." The river moved on, carrying silt and light and pieces of the bank with it. Michael stayed where he was, breathing in the August air, letting the sound of the cicadas and the faint lap of water against the shore fill the space between them. In the weeks that followed, Michael settled into a rhythm that felt almost whole. The days moved at the pace of the river outside, and evenings belonged to Robert. They would sit in the living room or on the porch, talking until the light faded from the water. Robert spoke of 1818 as if it were yesterday. He remembered the smell of smoke from the hearth, the damp of the riverbank when he walked home from town, the music of a fiddle in the tavern at night. He described faces of people long gone, their voices, their tempers. Sometimes he laughed when recalling an old scandal, the sound carrying into the hum of the cicadas. Michael found himself listening for that laugh, waiting for it to fill the quiet. It felt rare, something only he could draw from Robert. He believed no one else had ever heard it this way. Robert told him as much. He called Michael his anchor, saying without him he might dissolve into the air, nothing more than a shadow under the moonlight. The words landed with weight. No one had ever told Michael they needed him in that way. Late afternoons often found them by the porch railing, the river moving past with its steady persistence. Robert would speak while watching the water, his voice low, as if the current could carry their words downstream to strangers. He never looked tired, never distracted. Michael liked to think Robert had chosen him, that he could have attached himself to anyone but wanted this life, with him, in this house. One bright August morning, Dylan arrived without calling. His shirt clung to his back from the heat, his brow damp. He stayed near the kitchen counter and drank half a bottle of water before speaking. "You've seen the bank lately?" Michael, rinsing a coffee mug, glanced over. "It's fine." "It's not fine. You've lost another foot, maybe more. The roots are showing in some places. That's how it starts." Dylan's eyes shifted toward the counter. A yellow envelope with the city seal lay unopened beside the coffee pot. He picked it up. "They sent you something." Michael reached for it and slid it back under a stack of circulars. "It's about erosion. They've sent those before." "They don't keep sending them for no reason," Dylan said. The tone scraped at Michael's patience. "I'm handling it." Dylan studied him for a moment longer, then shook his head and left. The screen door snapped shut behind him. Later, Michael found Robert leaning in the corner of the living room, the light from the west windows catching faint edges of his form. "Your friend worries too much," Robert said. Michael stepped closer, the air cooling against his skin. "He means well. He wants to take you away from here. He doesn't understand what this house is to you. To us." That evening, while the sun lowered, Michael mentioned wanting to visit his parents for a weekend. Robert's face stilled, the easy warmth replaced by a quiet that felt heavier than words. His voice, when it came, was colder. "If you leave, the current will take me. You know what that means." Michael searched his expression, unsure if Robert spoke from fear or something else. "It would only be a few days." "A few days can be the difference between staying and slipping away forever," Robert replied. The moment pressed in on Michael. The hum of cicadas swelled outside, the river's movement filling the silence between them. Robert turned back toward the window, and the sunlight on the water shifted in strange patterns. It shimmered in places, almost too bright to look at, while just beneath, shadows moved with the current. The bank on the far side held steady, but he knew his own side crumbled a little more each season. He told himself it was the way of rivers to change their shape over time. Yet standing beside Robert, feeling the coolness radiating from him, Michael thought of how the river never stopped moving, never paused to see what it took with it. It pressed forward, slow but certain, carrying away small pieces until the shape of the land bent to its will. Robert's eyes found him again. The warmth had returned to his tone, a softness that made Michael's chest tighten. "Stay here with me. The river will hold us, and you'll never need to wonder where I am." The words clung to him as the day slipped into night, the sound of water outside steady and sure. The rains came in the second week of August, thick curtains that blurred the far bank until the trees there vanished. The Mad River swelled in the downpour, pulling at the soil until the water's edge crept closer to the house. Michael watched from the back porch as the current tugged at roots and carried off clumps of mud. The farthest corner of the porch had begun to tilt toward the water. Each step there made the boards shift beneath his feet. Inside, the air carried a faint mildew scent that clung no matter how many windows he opened. It came from the lower floor, seeping up through the gaps in the old wood. At night, the smell felt heavier, a damp weight in his chest. Robert noticed the changes too, though not in the way Dylan did. He leaned in the doorway to the kitchen one evening, his gaze moving over the floorboards. "You keep this place standing with very little, don't you?" Michael, drying a plate, glanced over. "It's holding." Robert's eyes flicked toward him. "For now. That takes money. You've been working more hours, haven't you? All for a house that no one else would fight for." Michael set the plate down. "It's worth it." Robert's smile tilted. "You tell yourself that. But do you think your friends would do the same for you? Do you think Dylan would give up his time, his comfort, for an old house tied to someone he couldn't even touch?" Michael opened his mouth to answer, but Robert's tone shifted before he could speak. The sharpness melted away, replaced with something warm. "You are the reason I am still here. You. No one else. I look at you and see the only person in this century who has kept me from fading into the dark." The words landed in Michael's chest, both an anchor and a weight. The rain kept falling through the week, the river turning the color of earth, impatient and thick. Its surface lost the easy shimmer it had earlier in the month. From the bedroom at night, Michael could hear the water striking the bank in a slow, rhythmic lap. It began to slip into his sleep, a whispering sound that seemed to wait for him to wake so it could be heard more clearly. Dylan came by one afternoon while the rain eased to a mist. He stood at the threshold of the kitchen, his shoes leaving wet marks on the floor. "I walked around the side yard," he said. "The bank's dropped at least 2 feet. The porch is pulling away from the foundation. If the inspectors see it, they'll condemn the place." Michael kept his gaze on the sink where he was rinsing vegetables. "It's not that bad." "It is," Dylan pressed. "You could lose the whole back of the house into the water." The idea struck a cold point in Michael's stomach, though he tried not to show it. Leaving the house meant leaving Robert. Without these walls, without the tether of the place he had called home for so long, Michael didn't know if Robert would remain at all. Later that night, Robert stood by the window, the glass dim with the reflection of the room. "Your friend is jealous," he said, his voice low. "He wants you to be like him. Ordinary. Alone." Michael hesitated. "He's worried." "Worried for himself," Robert replied. "If you leave this place, you lose me. If you stay, he loses you. Which choice do you think he wants more?" Michael turned away, trying to sort the truth in those words. Before he could speak, Robert moved closer. "I'm here with you now. No one else is. You hear me. You see me. Don't let someone else take that from you." The cadence of his voice pulled at Michael until the doubt thinned. The rain outside eased, but the river kept its swollen color, a restless surface that hinted at its strength underneath. From his bed, Michael listened to it lap at the edge of the land, steady and patient, as if it had all the time in the world. Michael woke before the alarm, sweat slicking his skin. The air in the bedroom clung to him, thick and unmoving, even with the windows open. Cicadas rattled in the distance, their sound heavy in the humid air. From the bed he could hear the river, closer now, its low churn rolling through the walls like a slow drumbeat. He stared at the ceiling until the pale light shifted and Robert appeared near the doorway, his outline faint against the gloom. You're awake early, Robert murmured. His voice carried a sweetness that seemed to coat the heat rather than cut it. Michael sat up, pressing a damp shirt to his face, and Robert stepped closer, his words curling into something stranger. When the house falls, we'll sink together, you and I. Michael's stomach tightened. Why would you say that? Robert smiled faintly, though his eyes didn't soften. It's the truth. You are my anchor. Without you, I'm nothing. If the river takes me again, I'd rather it take you too. He drifted toward the window, gazing at the moving water as if speaking to it. The days felt longer now, each hour dragging through the heat. Michael ignored the phone when it rang, letting his voicemail fill with messages from work, from his mother, from Dylan. The thought of explaining any of it felt exhausting, so he stopped trying. By the fourth day of this, he kept the curtains drawn, the air heavy and stale inside the house. The air conditioner, broken since the week before, sat silent in the corner. He'd checked his bank account twice and knew repair was impossible. When Dylan showed up without warning, Michael barely recognized his own reflection in Dylan's eyes. Thinner, paler, with red-rimmed eyes that blinked too slowly. Dylan stepped inside, and his expression tightened at the heat pressing in from the walls. You can't stay in here like this, he said. You look, I don't know, worse every time I see you. Michael tried to keep his voice steady. I'm fine. It's just the heat. Dylan looked toward the hall, where Robert stood in shadow. You're not fine, Dylan said. And this place isn't safe. You've seen the bank outside? The water's at the edge of your porch. I've seen it, Michael answered, his gaze dropping. It's still my home. Dylan placed a thin folder on the kitchen table. Old records from the local historical society. Newspaper clippings. A death notice from 1818. Michael skimmed the brittle pages until the words began to stick. Robert described as charming yet deceitful, a man who left debts and angry lovers in his wake. One piece mentioned a fight by the river. Witnesses claimed he'd gone in willingly after a heated argument. Michael pushed the papers back. You're wrong, he said quietly. Dylan never mentioned Robert before. He didn't even know if Robert was real, as he couldn't see or hear him. But he knew Michael thought he was real, and that in itself was powerful enough. Dylan's voice stayed low. I'm not trying to hurt you, but you have to know this person. He's not what you think. Robert's voice came from the hall, low and cutting. He's jealous of you. He wants you small and ordinary, the way you were before me. Michael turned toward the sound. Robert stepped forward, his expression a calm mask, but his words pressed harder. You don't need him. You don't need anyone but me. The conversation with Dylan ended in silence, the papers left behind. By nightfall, Michael sat alone in the living room, the air stifling, the hum of cicadas replaced by the river's low, restless sound. He leaned back and looked up, noticing the ceiling above the couch. A water stain had spread there since morning. Wide, uneven, shaped almost like a hand reaching down. Outside, the river lapped at the soil beneath the house. Each movement sounded closer than before, as if the water no longer moved past but toward him. The foundation creaked in the night heat, and Michael thought he could hear Robert's voice in the rhythm of the current, soft and insistent. Rain lashed against the warped window panes, drumming without rhythm. The kitchen floor tilted slightly under Michael's weight, the boards no longer holding steady. Beneath, he could hear the groan of wood and the muffled rush of water, the river pushing harder against the bank. Each swell outside seemed to carry a piece of the land with it. The storm had rolled in fast, lightning illuminating the trees for the briefest moments before shadows closed again around the house. Inside, the air felt heavy and wet. A rivulet of water traced down the wall near the pantry, finding its way through an old hairline crack. It pooled at his feet, warm from the day's heat, yet carrying the earthy smell of the swollen river. Dylan stood in the doorway, soaked through. His shirt clung to his skin, his breathing quick. "You can't stay here tonight," he said, voice raised over the storm. "It's not safe. The whole place could give way." His eyes darted toward the floor, toward the subtle dip that had deepened since his last visit. Michael's gaze shifted to the corner, where the shadows were thicker. Robert emerged from them slowly, as if the darkness itself gave shape to his body. The storm's light caught on the pale lines of his face, making him seem unreal and more vivid at the same time. Michael's pulse quickened, though whether from fear or longing he could not decide. "You're safe with me," Robert said, his voice warm but sharpened at the edges. "He doesn't understand you. Dylan will drag you back to a life where you are nothing more than another lonely man." His expression softened into something like sorrow. "Stay. We'll ride this out together." Dylan's eyes searched Michael's, as if willing him to see past the pull of that voice. "I don't want you to die." The wind howled against the house, rattling the loose pane in the living room. Water seeped faster through the cracks, the smell of mildew now stronger, as if the walls themselves were breathing it out. Michael looked between them, feeling the weight of both men's presence pressing in from opposite sides. Robert took a step closer, his outline flickering in the dim light. "He won't love you like I do. He'll never see you the way I see you." His tone thickened, taking on something deeper, almost a warning. "Don't leave me. Not now." Michael's chest tightened. For weeks he had listened to Robert's words, clung to them when the rest of his life felt far away and unreachable. Yet now, in the roar of the storm, they sounded less like love and more like a chain. Dylan's hand gripped the doorframe as if to steady himself, his expression a mix of urgency and disbelief. A loud crack split the air inside the house. Somewhere beneath them, wood tore apart, and the floor shuddered under Michael's feet. The sound mingled with the rushing outside, the river's voice louder than it had been all month. It was no longer a whisper. It was a roar. Robert's beauty seemed almost painful now, his presence so strong it blurred the edges of the room. "If you walk out, you'll never find someone who understands you again," he said, softer now, almost pleading. The walls trembled. Water streaked down the plaster, trailing across the faint outline of the stain on the ceiling. The grasping shape of it seemed to reach for him. Michael took one last look at Robert. He saw not the charm that had pulled him in, but the hollow core beneath it. Love that did not set him free. Love that wanted him to stay even as the house gave way under their feet. He stepped toward Dylan. The decision felt like forcing air into lungs that had been empty for too long. Robert's voice followed him to the door, breaking apart like the sound of wood splitting under strain. Rage flared in it, then faltered into something quieter, almost mournful. The storm swallowed the rest as Michael crossed the threshold. The road still smelled of rain. Mud clung to Michael's shoes as he stood with Dylan, watching the house from a safe distance. The storm had broken in the early hours, leaving behind a sky that seemed scraped raw, its pale light spilling over the swollen river. From here, Michael could see the waterline touching the back steps, pressing against the structure like a hand urging it forward. A hollow groan cut through the wet air, followed by a sharp crack. The rear wall listed forward, pulling the roof down in a shuddering sweep. Floorboards tore free, the kitchen counter tilted, and a rain-streaked window shattered inward. The whole section dropped into the river with a crash and disappeared under the churn. The water didn't slow. It took every piece without pause, folding them under the surface, sending planks spinning in the current. Michael's throat tightened, not from the loss of walls or furniture, but from the sense that a living thing had been swallowed. He could almost feel the river's satisfaction in the stillness that followed. Dylan stayed beside him, silent, raincoat hood down now, letting the wind push damp hair against his forehead. Neither of them moved until the sound faded to the occasional ripple. They spent the night at Dylan's, the hum of a box fan filling the room. Michael didn't sleep. His eyes tracked the shadow of the ceiling fan blades until the gray light of morning slipped across the floor. When Dylan stirred, Michael slipped out without waking him. The riverbank was coated in mist, the air sharp and damp. Where the house had stood, nothing remained but jagged earth, mud crumbling into the water. Michael scanned the shallows and then he saw him. Robert stood ankle-deep in the current, hair curling with moisture, shirt clinging to his shoulders. His eyes held no spark of anger now, only a quiet weight. "You'll miss me," Robert said. His voice carried over the water, soft enough that Michael leaned forward to catch it. Michael felt the pull again, the same invisible thread that had kept him through the long, airless nights. The river lapped at Robert's knees as he stepped backward, his gaze never breaking from Michael's. Then the water climbed to his waist, his chest, his throat, until the mist folded around him and the space where he stood became empty. Michael stayed there until the cold crept through his jeans and numbed his legs. The mist thinned, revealing only the steady brown current sliding past. He turned away before it could draw him closer. With Dylan's help, Michael took a small apartment above a laundromat in town. The windows rattled when trucks passed, and the walls smelled faintly of detergent. He hung no curtains for weeks, leaving the glass bare so he could watch the streetlights shift across the floor at night. Dylan visited often, bringing groceries, fixing a stubborn door hinge, coaxing him into talking about ordinary things. Life regained a fragile rhythm. He answered calls from work again. He cooked simple meals, kept the counters clean. Some evenings, the quiet felt like air he could breathe without effort. Other nights, it pressed on him until his chest ached. Every so often, the sound would come. Faint, steady, impossible to place at first. Running water. Not from the pipes or the street gutters, but something farther off, too deep to trace. He would lie still, eyes open in the dark, and listen until another sound threaded through it. A voice, low and almost kind. Words blurred by distance, but the tone was unmistakable. When morning came, the sound was gone. He told himself it belonged to memory, to exhaustion, to the way the mind sometimes rearranges what it cannot release. Yet whenever he passed the river on his way into town, his eyes went to the waterline, scanning without meaning to. By early September, the river had resettled into its slower pace. Silt clung to the banks where the foundation had been, grass already beginning to creep back. From a distance it looked ordinary again, as if nothing had shifted in its depths. Michael knew better. The pull remained. Hidden in the easy swirl of current, waiting for the next soul who would stand too close and listen too long.
Please make sure you are subscribed and be one of the strange.